Feminism has progressed a lot over the years. The history of this timeline begins with the first wave of feminism, which took place in the 1830s to early 1900s. This wave was led by upper-class white women, and this time period for women was focused on suffrage. They looked at the promotion of equal contract and property rights for women. Women no longer wanted to be owned by their husbands and wanted to have ownership of their children. Women in Canada had a political agenda. They wanted to be able to vote and be classified as persons. In 1921, majority of Canadian women were allowed to vote and be in office, but Indigenous and Asian women were not allowed to vote. It wasn't until 1960 that Indigenous women were allowed to vote. Women before 1929 were not considered persons. The British common law stated that women were persons in the matter of pains and penalties, but not in the matter of rights and privileges. In 1927, the Famous Five, a group of women from Alberta, asked the Supreme Court if the word persons included women in the British North America Act of 1867. At first, the Canadian government had rejected this case made by the women, but then the Famous Five convinced the government of Canada to appeal to the Judicial Committee of the British Privy, which was the highest form of court at the time. On October 18, 1929, women were finally considered persons in Canada. This wave had ended because the two main goals were accomplished. The second wave of feminism began after World War II in the 1960s to the 1980s. This wave was also led by middle-class white women. It was the beginning of an ongoing fight for social and cultural inequalities, which is also referred to as the Women's Liberation Movement. This movement created the Royal Commission on the Status of Women in Canada in 1967, which suggested things as to what the government should be doing to maintain equality between men and women. Throughout the second wave, there were a number of goals that were set. They wanted to have equal pay in the workplace, paid maternity leave, changes to abortion laws, and the end of sexual showcases through pageants and pornography. In the United States, some things that were accomplished were the establishment of the National Organization for Women, the Equal Pay Act of 1963, and birth control. In the 1970s, Carol Hanisch published the essay titled The Personal is Political. The third wave of feminism started in the 1990s, and it is controversial as to when it ended. Some people believe this wave of feminism is stretched out to now, and others believe that it ended around 2012. This wave is seen as a new generation of women, younger. They didn't want feminism to be labeled as the same critiques from the second wave, that the whole movement was just for middle-class white women. This wave is defined as a form of inclusiveness. For the first time, intersectionality became a new term. It was taken into consideration that women of different class, race, and sexuality are all fighting for the same equality. This becomes a central focus within this wave. The fourth wave of feminism revolves around the use of social media. Social media has impacted the whole world, making it possible for everyone and anyone from all over the world to be connected at once. Platforms such as Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and Tumblr have made it possible for all feminists to have a voice and reach out to a community of people from all over. Hashtags have become a tool people are using to start movements. It's been pretty present in the women's movement, as there have been many recently that have struck conversations about women's rights and the abuse they take. Although social media and the hashtags seem like a wonderful thing, there are criticisms and backlash, just like every other wave has experienced.